Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. Today is Sunday, June 24th, 2018. Let's just give you some Smaulgld updates. First update is ever popular Smaulgld Moronica podcast is out. If you're interested in that, you can check that out at Smaulgld at the YouTube channel. Also, What's Next for Mueller is the title of this week's In Case You Missed It, Top Gold, Silver, and Crypto Stories. That is also now live. It has been sent to subscribers of Smaulgld, the blog, and it's also up on BitChute and also up on YouTube. Some other Smaulgld items. I do occasionally, more than occasionally, I do a series called Smaulgld Subscribers Sound Off, and I bring on Smaulgld subscribers. And they get a chance. They basically have the floor for a half hour to an hour. I ask questions, but basically it's your chance to sound off on some prearranged topics that we discussed beforehand. So if you're interested in appearing on the Smaulgld show, just send me an email at smaulgld@gmail.com and we'll arrange to have you on. Also, if you're interested in donating to the Smaulgld channel and help it keep going, you can donate via PayPal. You can become a Smaulgld patron, and you can also donate via Litecoin, Bitcoin, and Ethereum at the links below this YouTube. It's also be republished on BitChute, and also the links are on the Smaulgld site. I do appreciate all the donations that we get. If you want to be a guest on the show, just a reminder, shoot me an email at Smaulgld. If you want to know the format of the show, go to the Smaulgld YouTube channel and check out the playlist I have on there, the Smaulgld Subscribers Sound Off. You can hear the style of the interviews. I've done more than probably 24 of those interviews. So again, if you're interested, please sign up. Okay, so before we get started, today I want to go through a couple of the prior live streams that we've done because I've got some interesting new information on a couple of them. And one of the things before we get into the Bitcoin adoption and silver jewelry, and we're also going to revisit is Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme or a fraud, I want to play for you something that I did, I made it about a couple of years ago, and the idea was whether one has actually thought through their positions and whether they're hedged against maybe that they might be wrong. And it was called game over theory. Are you hedged against your own biases? Let's have a listen.
Game over.
Hello and welcome to Game Over Theory. I'm going to ask you a series of self-reflective questions. You hedged against your own confirmation bias? What if what you believe is wrong? Are you hedged against your own confirmation bias? I'm going to discuss game theory and game over theory. Game theory is the study of mathematical models of conflict and cooperation between intelligent and rational decision-makers. Game over theory, in contrast, is a theory that alternative financial media information and narratives predicting economic collapse and soaring precious metal prices are always correct, causing intelligent, rational Can you hear now? Is there a way you can hear? The stream says it's good. Only hear faint noise. Strange. You hear faint noise or you hear me? Okay, good. Let's go. All right. So I wanted to revisit the couple of items that we had discussed in earlier live streams. One of them was, and I thought this was very clever, is Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme or a fraud? And we had a lengthy discussion about that, and I concluded it was neither a fraud or a Ponzi scheme. I posted this on Gab, and I got a very clever response. Basically said, how can it be a Ponzi scheme if the CME group, the CBOE, are going to have or do have futures? If they do have Bitcoin futures on a Ponzi scheme, that would mean it would be illegal. There's no way that they would actually run a futures exchange with a Ponzi scheme. Now you can say, well, they're a Ponzi scheme. That's true, but remember, for a Ponzi scheme to have a negative effect, it has to be illegal. And at least it's not illegal according to the CME group and the CBOE. Also, Coinbase is going to become an alternative trading system on Coinbase. On the SEC. So that means the SEC also doesn't view Bitcoin as a Ponzi scheme or a fraud. Bitcoin is the creation of globalist Peter Thiel. Could be. I'm not advocating Bitcoin or gold. I'm just making points about. I don't think that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme or a fraud. I'm not denying that it could be part of some globalist plot, or it could not be. There's no way of knowing that. I don't know that. Some people are convinced one way or the other. Okay, the other issue I wanted to talk about, which was, I was just doing a search before we got online. And last night we were talking about a potential scenario where if the economy in the United States were to do well, that might be good for gold and silver. And that goes contrary to everything we've been hearing, that basically gold and silver are going to skyrocket when the dollar collapses, the petrodollar ends, the global financial system goes away, credit freezes, all the terrible scenarios as to how you protect yourself for gold and silver. And as you recall, I didn't deny that those might be triggers for gold and silver to rise. What I have been saying is that perhaps that day is further away than many of us might believe. So I switched my thinking over to, well, how can gold or silver do well if we don't have a collapse? And I immediately thought of, and we discussed last night, how the bulk of gold and silver demand is in jewelry, or at least gold demand is 52%, and silver demand for jewelry is twice the amount as it is for coins, rounds, and bars. And we talked also briefly about how a good portion of gold and silver demand, which is really holding up the price, is from China and India. And a lot of that is because China has become a economic superpower. There's 300, 400, 500 million people now in China that can afford gold and silver, whereas 20, 30 years ago there were few. Same with India. You've got a middle class that's getting bigger, getting richer, and they buy a lot of silver and a lot of gold. Now in the United States, we're not seeing that. So what I posited last night was that if game changer, just so you hit the comments, game over, that if we were to have an economic boom in the United States, however it's orchestrated, because I know, and I'm not oblivious to the fact that there's 21 million trillion in debt, and there's 250 trillion dollars in unfunded liabilities, and you've got unfunded pension liabilities. None of that matters in an artificial economy, because it may matter eventually. China is a massive debt Ponzi scheme based on credit creation. When you run these government-run credit creations and you run them for the purpose of creating a wealth effect, you can actually create artificial wealth. And the people in China are benefiting from that, and they can spend some of their money on gold. And as I mentioned, they spend it on silver. So it's quite possible that the United States could be entering into a period where the economy grows and people have more money in their pocket and perhaps less debt because fewer people go to college, more people go to trade schools, they get good paying jobs. Doesn't matter how we get there, but the point is that there's a period of time where it's possible that jewelry demand will spike if there is a wealth effect, just as it has in India and China. And that could boost the price of gold and silver without an economic collapse. And then you'd have the dual benefit of knowing that the economic activity is phony and eventually it will collapse. But during the boom times, you'll have more cash in your pocket in order to buy gold and silver. That was the theory. And I looked back in history and I found a period of time where gold and silver rose during a boom period. From Reagan's 84 to 88, you had GDP grow 7, 4, 3, 4, 5%. And from 85 to 88, gold rose about 70%. Silver at one point doubled and fell back, but still grew 25% during that period. So there is historical basis for, if you think about it, for gold and silver to rise during good economic times. If you think about gold as being riches, well, if people get rich, then you would have people would buy gold. Now, what I wanted to mention that I ran across today, which is very interesting, I found an article. I did a search. I just typed in, I think it was crypto and silver, Bitcoin and silver, and I found an example of the other thing we've talked about is one of the problems that I always have with Bitcoin is no matter how good it is, why would you go out and buy it so that you could spend it? It doesn't make any sense because you already have cash that you can spend. You already have credit cards you can use. Why would you go out and buy more money so that you can spend money in Bitcoin? And I thought, and the point is that people buy it and they say the reason that Bitcoin is going to skyrocket some more and eventually is going to be the money of the future is everyone will use Bitcoin and they'll adopt it and that'll drive the price higher. And the problem I had with that was a catch-22. If people buy it and they hoard it, the price goes higher because no one's selling it. But once they start spending it, then they are selling it and the price goes down. So I was never able to square that. I said, unless there's some incentive to buy Bitcoin or Litecoin or whatever the currency is, not an ICO, whatever the currency is that you would want other than just holding it, I wouldn't see why people would do it. And the problem with people buying it and holding it is we've seen what's just happened. People buy and hold it because they expect it to go up, and when it goes up, they hold it. But when it goes down, they get nervous and they sell it. But all during that time period, you haven't had the adoption, and perhaps if you did have the adoption, you'd see even more selling. So I've always been concerned that there's a chicken-egg issue to solve almost in Bitcoin adoption, how you get use of it so that people aren't dumping it when they're selling it, and how somehow that makes it attractive to buy it. Okay, so today I ran across an example that covers that point and also covers the issue of what happens in boom times, what might happen in boom times to drive the price of gold and silver higher. I ran across a story of a high-end jeweler in Silicon Valley. It's probably the richest area in the United States, and they sell high-end expensive silver and gold jewelry. The place is called Silver something or other. That's how I found it. The owner of the store is the first jewelry store to accept the currency they say. I'm sure there's others. It's not hard to set up an account with BitPay or Coinbase to accept cryptocurrencies. But anyway, they say that they're the first. But what they've claimed, the guy who runs the place, is that the store is now selling more silver jewelry people using cryptocurrencies than they are using credit cards. Now that shows that people with cryptocurrencies are a microcosm of people with would you consider they're in boom time. So if somebody has held cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, they bought it 100, 200, 400, 600, no matter what it is today, it's 6, 7,000, and they're buying high-end jewelry. They're in a boom time, and they're spending their cryptocurrency. Now, there's two issues. Well, they're spending their cryptocurrencies, they're actually maybe causing the price to go down. Put that aside for a second. But what they are doing is they're spending their gains on something that they wouldn't be able to otherwise spend it on, which is high-end or any kind type of silver and gold jewelry. So the riches of their ecosystem in cryptocurrencies flow into gold and silver, just as if the whole economy was doing better, people would have money to buy gold and silver jewelry. Now, many people who get rich, they don't necessarily think about buying gold or silver for investment, and maybe they wouldn't buy gold or silver for investment. They might, but people will buy luxury items. See, when you buy a stack or a monster box or a gold coin, that's not a luxury purchase. You're doing it to hold on to it. But when you buy these expensive items, gold this or silver jewelry, those are consumption that are only made possible by a boom time, and the people who own cryptocurrencies cryptocurrencies are in a boom time. Now, Pat, you're saying, yes, the average purchase price is very high. Yes, I'm using it as a microcosm that the crypto people who've made all that money, they're in a boom time. And yes, of course, they're going to buy high-end things. There's nothing, however, stopping, forget cryptocurrencies. When people make money, like the Indians, they're not buying high-end jewelry. They're buying $12 chains, silver chains. They're buying a $20 ring or a $15 ring. What I'm saying is when the economy gets better, people have disposable income and they will spend it. It doesn't have to be the luxury items. They will spend it on gold and silver jewelry. They already spend it on gold and silver jewelry. It's just that in America, I don't think that people have had an increase in disposable income in 20 years. So you can't count on the wealthy to buy enough gold and silver jewelry to push the price higher. But I do believe, this is a theory, speculation, that if the economy got better, then you might see more gold and silver purchases, and that could drive the price higher without an economic collapse. And then people who were lucky enough to buy it as a luxury item, if there is a collapse, well, they're kind of covered now because they've spent a lot of their disposable income buying 7 or 8 chains or whatever they buy, or necklaces or bracelets or rings or so on. Now, the other thing about this story, which was Gus the Broken is here. Well, you beat Hoshea, but he is out in Israel, so it must have been 4 in the morning there for him. So he couldn't stay for the 2 minutes of technical difficulties that we had. Well, good to have you. But the other thing that was interesting about the article, which somewhat solves, as I was expecting, one of the things I had said about crypto adoption is, if there's why would I go out and buy cryptocurrency other than for the appreciation? Because I wouldn't go out and buy it to buy a cup of coffee, because I can buy a cup of coffee with change in my pocket or some other mechanism, so there's no convenience there. But on high-end products, and probably even on lower-end products, it might make a lot of sense to go out and buy cryptocurrencies, because the merchants can give a discount on the items that they're selling because they're bypassing the credit card fee. They can split the credit card fee with you. They can eliminate the credit card fee. And even on the small end products like coffee, it could become, as long as there are, whether it's Bcash or Bitcoin on Lightning Network or Segwit, whatever it is, there's not high transaction fees, then they can offer you a lower price. So it makes sense now to go out and buy for somebody a cryptocurrency, to hold it for the potential increase in price, but also to spend it knowing that they can get a 2-3% discount on every purchase. So that might solve the issue there, and then again tie that into using the cryptocurrency to buy gold or silver, and then on a broader scale, just people using their fiat gains in an economy that's doing better to buy gold or silver. Now, what I was getting at the beginning of the show, I wanted to play for you a video I've done. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it with you here in the thing. It's called Game Over Theory. You can listen to it. It's part of my thinking that I started when I did it in April 2017. So by then I was very far along. I had started questioning the silver gurus, the gold bug gurus, when they would cite things and then they would predict stuff and it didn't happen. And I started to wonder, well, why doesn't it happen? There's got to be a reason. Either they're just making stuff up or there's something going on. And that's when I started doing my own research and my own blog. And some of the things were quite evident why things weren't happening. Because they had cherry-picked data. They didn't have the full story. So in this video that I did called Game Over Theory, are you hedged against your own confirmation bias? I had it. I wanted to believe all these stories that gold and silver were set to skyrocket. But you almost have to have your head examined if you believe them for 7 years and they tell you the same story. What happened to me was I started, every time a new story came out that was proof that it was going to happen, that's when I did the research on my own. So some of the questions that I ask in this is, what if credit creation is near infinite? What if there is no silver or gold shortage? They tell you this. I hear people last night were telling me, oh, they're doing this in India. Well, maybe they are, maybe they're not. And even if they are, so what? What if silver's use gets replaced by graphene or they use less of it or they use nanoparticles? What if there's new cost-effective ways of mining precious metals? What if they outlaw gold and silver ownership? What if the real investment demand for gold and silver becomes paper or digital gold and silver? That's happening. I had this one. What if the road to Rooter is just a comic book and not a plan? Well, some people actually believe that's a plan. Big Swear says it. He's got the comic book. He's made the interpretation. Not everyone believes all of these things, but enough people believe enough of them. Well, greatest wealth transfer coming? That's what Mike Maloney said. Where's the wealth transfer? The people who have had silver have lost their wealth. What if it's not game over soon? It's just early innings of a long extra inning game. There's the idea of the global reset. That's definitely going to happen. Well, maybe not. And what if the global reset doesn't involve gold and silver? What if China really is a Ponzi scheme and no matter how much gold they have? What if the United States actually does have 8,000 tons of gold in its vault? Everyone's convinced, not everyone, in the gold community they don't, and somehow that's a big hole that no one knows about, and if people found out, it would be game over. Maybe not, even if they don't have it, but what if they do have it? What if the gold-silver ratio continues to rise? I've been mentioning this for 5 years. It's gone up from 50 to 80. What if what you think is inevitable might not be imminent or even occur during your lifetime? So all of these things you have. What if COMEX never defaults? What if JP Morgan doesn't own hundreds of millions of silver eagles or doesn't own any of that gold that's in its vaults? What if this is all just wishful, fanciful thinking for precious metal holders and for them to listen to newsletter writers to get you to subscribe, and they keep telling you it's going to happen, and you're like Linus waiting for the great pumpkin. And this is a way of selling precious metals. So who benefits from touting these narratives? Sovereign size gold buy in 45 days going to shock the world. And the first time I heard that, I said, that's ridiculous. So many people believe that. You'll see. You'll see. Yeah, I saw it. Nothing happened. So, any event, it's an interesting way of looking at things. I try to be objective, and I try not to believe any story that just comes along. All right, Chrono Trigger Man, did you hear I hope you heard the part about why Bitcoin is not a Ponzi scheme based on the legal basis that the SEC would not provide a license or registration of Coinbase or any crypto exchange if it was actually engaged in buying and selling a Ponzi scheme like Bitcoin. Similarly, they wouldn't allow futures by the CME group and the CBOE group to run futures if those futures were based off of a Ponzi scheme. All right, let's get to the questions or the comments so far. You got your hellos. You can say hello to Pat and Tom. Tom's been here almost every evening. Good to see you. Jonathan Rigo, probably first time here, can't hear. That's not good. Shea bowed out. Good night, Shea. Let's see. Bitcoin is I think it means a PSYOPs is pad to move the world to the next currency system, whatever this or will be. Now, whether that's intentional or not, or whether that's true or not, that's probably what might happen. Is if you have a collapse in a system, and people say, well, they'll rush to gold, they'll rush to silver, they'll use that as backing. It's possible that the excess will rush into the crypto scheme, and if they've managed to corral the crypto system on exchanges and they can track it better, then that actually becomes a big escape valve. So that's possible. Whether they intended to set it up that way or whether it even happens, who knows? But that is a possibility. Game changer, game over. Bing, bang, bomb. Okay. I want a silver ring in my nose like everyone else so I can be different. Yep. Matthew Rose. Credit collapsed 3 times in U.S. history. Just before the Revolutionary War. Now, wasn't it? Well, they had a real credit issue after the Revolutionary War because they had to print Continentals. And they say it wasn't worth the paper it was printed on in order to pay for the war. And that's why they actually had to have had to get rid of the Confederacy, and they had to force them to pony up the states to pay. Civil War and World War II. Yeah, about every 80 years. Yeah, but Civil War was the same thing. They didn't know how to pay for the war. Lincoln wanted to do greenbacks. Using 80 years, that's just a coincidence. It's not like it happens every 80 years. You had a Revolutionary War, you had a Civil War, and you had World War II. Now, you could say then now we have to have World War III. It's 80 years from now. But the credit and the wars, they do go together, but there's really no significance in the 80 years. Credit can collapse for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be for, but a war generally puts on an immediate credit creation necessity if they don't have the money to pay for the war. Pad, the next move by the globalists would be to forgive college debt and free college. Yes. Half the student loans, I believe, are either in default, half are either in default or what's the word? Delinquent. Okay? And then think about the other half. What about the other ones who are thinking about being delinquent or this close to being delinquent every month? It is not good, and these kids went to college. They understand that was such a great idea. They learned a bunch of nonsense for the most part. I mean, unless they took something, let's say, engineering or pre-med or pre-law or a specific skill like accounting. They just went there to learn about social justice. That's not an employable skill. I mean, because you can learn social justice without going to college. You don't need to sit in a class and pay a lot of money and borrow money to hear that. You can get it online. You can get it on the street. There's really no value in that, and there's no jobs in that other than becoming a professor or maybe a politician. So the problem with the degree is you default on it. There's no collateral. You can give the diploma back. That's about it. That's why I've never understood Bernie Sanders when in his logic he says it doesn't make a stitch of sense for the guy who's got a mortgage to only pay 3 or 4% and the person going to college has to pay 12%. Yeah, it does matter. It makes a lot of sense. It's called collateral. It's called being the lender being able to have some comfort that he might get paid back. But that's Bernie Sanders. He doesn't understand. Tom Manley, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. That was a Ronald Reagan line, I believe. Matthew Roots 5 times during Washington. Yes, in 1971. That's right. I don't mean to denigrate the idea that there's some type of period of time after which then you have these credit crises. I agree. They're always due after you go for a long period of time without one. Yeah, the high-end store Pat was talking about was the jewelry store that was catering to cryptocurrency clients, mostly Bitcoin. Gus the Broken is here. Several people have concluded that the cryptocurrency craze didn't affect the dollars used to hold gold and silver, two different types of investment, insurance versus speculation. That's a very good point. I agree with that. However, many people who did buy gold and silver did not buy it for insurance. They bought it because game over, buy it before there's none left. Silver shortage, sovereign size gold buy in 45 days, COMEX default, commitment of traders never happened before. See, that's where people bought gold and especially silver as a speculative asset. And so when they didn't get their speculation, they moved to crypto, I believe. Some of them did. And we saw some of your high-profile commentators that were touting gold and silver. They moved over to tout a more speculative investment, possibly because they were touting the precious metals as speculative investments. That's something I've never done. I've always said, I go as far as to say gold isn't even money. I say gold is a store of value and asset. It is not set to skyrocket. And the reason I say it's not money is because it's not currently used. They've actually banned its use as a medium of exchange in the United States. So it's something that you hold. But a lot of the gold and silver commentators were telling you why collapse was coming, game changer, gold backed yuan, all these stories that meant it was a game changer. This is the point. Wealth transfer is going to happen. That's why they bought gold and silver. Every one of the ones who sells gold and silver online, all the commentators, all the stories, they're all about why gold is set to launch, not why it's a good asset to hold. You hold it for insurance. So I do believe a lot of the money went, the speculative money from gold and silver, a lot of it went to cryptocurrencies. And when it went to cryptocurrencies and they lost it, that money's gone forever because those people, they didn't make their money speculating on precious metals. Now they lost money speculating on cryptocurrencies. So that money's probably never coming back. Chrono Triggermancer, yes, silver is highly speculative though. Well, that's the other thing. The silver people also sold silver as some type of wealth insurance. It's never been. They really have done a job on it because historically silver was called the devil's metal for a reason. Because it was so volatile. It's a small market. The other thing is the silver Democrats in the late 19th century, and there's always been a debate in the United States until they got rid of the gold and silver standard. There was always a debate between the inflationists, which were the Democrats. They always wanted to throw silver into the mix because they knew it was an inflationary metal. Silver is not historically a long-term store of value. If you look at the charts, it has these spikes. You get the silver mania. You had it during the gold rush in 1849. All the gold came back east. That made silver more valuable. You had it in 1980. It was a huge spike. You had it in 2011. All those times it outperformed gold, but for a brief shining moment. So, and if you look at gold over time, it's clearly a much more stable asset than silver is. But they keep saying that silver is what they try to do is make silver the perfect asset. Just store of value, and it's set to skyrocket. That is mutually exclusive. The same when they try to say Bitcoin is a store of value. No, it's not. It's a speculative asset. Can't be. If you stored it 2 months ago and it was $13,000 and it's $7,000, you've lost your value. You haven't stored anything. You haven't stored jack. But if you bought it at $2,000 16 months ago and it went to $20,000, you had a nice speculative gain. Cryptocurrencies has high transaction, too high for small purchase. So that's not necessarily true. There's currencies that don't have those transaction fees. Bitcash has lowered them. Pcash, Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin has also become a lot cheaper. It's got very cheap now in the last few months. Litecoin is cheap to use. So that's not an issue anymore with the cryptocurrencies. The cost of use, the problem with the cryptocurrencies is no one uses them. That's the real issue. Tom Manley, use the KISS method and just buy and hold gold. Yeah, if you save in gold instead of saving in a bank account, you can see how over time you've done well. Look, silver's lost 40 some odd % of its value versus gold the last 5 years. That's not good. And gold has actually outperformed the dollar in the last 5 years. So gold has held its, and that's just 5 years. You just go over time. There's only times where silver spikes, but it doesn't hold its value. It usually collapses right away and then goes nowhere, just like it's doing now, for years, even decades. But of course, it's different this time. You'll see. Yes, but it will never go to zero like cryptos could. Well, that's true. Okay. Which one, Pat? At present, net workload average, Bitcoin transaction. Oh, he's covered my point around 23 cents. Too much higher. Yes, but it is smaller than the 1.1 to 4% credit card the credit card processors take. And at the beginning of the program, I was talking about how a high-end realtor was selling more, jewelry store selling more silver jewelry using cryptocurrency. He actually said he sold over $10 million worth, 8 figures. And he was selling more with people using cryptocurrencies than he was with credit cards. And that's because the credit card fees are 3 to 4%, and he was passing some of the savings on if the people use use Bitcoin. I remember when gold prices went up 20 years ago, says Gus the Broken, through his sleepy eyes. All the stores sold all their massive rings and bracelets, made huge profits, and bought hollow products instead to sell. Yes, he's in the Netherlands. Okay. Chrono Trigger fan, any commodity item that doesn't deteriorate won't go to zero. Antique glass cups from 200 years ago won't go to zero. That doesn't mean they're necessarily a good investment. Yeah, that's something that doesn't go to zero is basically saying it doesn't suck. That doesn't mean much. So, when people, everyone's probably had this experience, but I always notice this is when people are eating something that they really don't like, and they say, how is it? And they go, it sucks. Want some? Like, why would I want some if you just told me it's not any good? Yeah, so I don't think you buy gold or silver because it can't go to zero. You could say that about many items. I'm looking around there's books, I've got CDs, I got a chair. It's not going to go to zero. But like Chrono Trigger fan says, doesn't make it a good investment. All right. I do follow them, but that's it. Pat, the U.S. has its gold now in deep storage, never dug out of the ground. Tom Manley, listen to Bo. Yes, Shemitah, game changer. Okay, let's start it off. Okay, on the bottles there. I got to scroll down here a bit. Chrono Trigger fan. What started off as the golden Fort Knox is present, but he apothecated is now, oh my God, the gold is gone, stand for delivery thanks to conspiracy bloggers. Yeah, and there's another story out there that it was stolen in the middle of the night, and now I think Jim Willie says he knows it's in the Philippines, and Trump managed to get it back. It's like, where did I come up with this stuff? Fort Knox is an echo chamber. Most of the gold stories are echo chambers. The biggest one I can point to is gold-backed yuan. Every gold commentator, almost every gold commentator, other than Coase Jansen and then Rory Hall, touted that story, repeated it. China just announced, Jim Rickards said, China just announced that if you're holding yuan, you could bring them to the Shanghai Gold Exchange and get gold. Mike Maloney called me out, and he called it gold's game changer. And he said that this was going to happen. It was a game changer. And there was never any evidence that was planned by China, any rationale why they would even do that. Yet they insisted on it because it was in the Nikkei Asian Review, and they cited other gold commentators who like to believe this kind of stuff. And then they changed it to not gold-backed yuan, but to gold exchangeable. And then they said, which is what I said all along, they will have a yuan-denominated oil futures contract. That became the petro yuan. And then they dropped all notions that it was going to be gold-backed. Well, that was the big deal. The fact that they're trading futures in yuan isn't that big of a deal, but then they made that into a big deal. And ever since they launched the petro yuan, the dollar has hegemoned a lot higher. So it hasn't had this game-changing effect. Oh, you'll see. Well, they're going to do it in... It's always... They get you on a treadmill, they sell you a narrative, and they keep selling it to you, and you keep hoping it's going to happen, and they just keep moving the goalposts, and they keep you telling, just keep subscribing. They come up with more stories why it's going to happen. And then when they finally realize that story's not going to happen, they stop telling you that one, And they bring back an old one like COMEX default. Look at there's no gold in the vaults. There's no gold. And everybody starts telling everyone there's no gold in the vault. No one looks at the numbers. No one understands what's going on. They heard it. It's just like telephone. They just pass it on. And I'll tell you, all the channels that repeat those stories, they get thousands of views. And then people repeat it. I'm an engraver, says Gus the Broken. Used to hand engrave glasses, well, for a while. Some of the old engraved glasses a couple hundred years ago were selling for $1,200. Yeah, well, that's art when you start talking about what you're doing. They were top of the end and rare as a hen's teeth. Most Venetian glass and the glass blowers in Venice mostly died out. I always wondered what would happen if they inhaled. They'd just burn their lungs and then they would turn to glass. Ouch. Well, Chrono Trigger fan. Used to collect vintage glass bottles himself. Certain collectibles definitely have a place in the market. Yeah, if you know what you're doing, you know the market. Just like when Goldline tried to sell those gold roosters as rare French numismatics, and they were basically not worth more than the spot price of gold. Bitcoin production costs for larger pools cost 4.4K. We still have room on the downside. All right. Database DNA is one of the few times the pumpers were right about game changers when Jim Sinclair recognized the powers that be were abusing the integrity of the Swiss system would drive the creation of internals. That is a good call. You know, when you abuse a particular system or you kick people out. Oh, Bitcoin is a result of financial recklessness and the financial crisis. They wanted a trustless system. They didn't trust the Fed. Yep. Look, we're not saying these aren't smart people. What I'm saying is that many of them promote a narrative, and they continue to promote it, and they can promote it for years, and people, once they want to believe it, and then they buy the metals, then they have to believe it, and they want confirmation. I've seen some comments, oh, thank you very much for reassuring me. Reassuring you that why don't you just look and see how much money you lost? You want to be reassured that you lost money? No, but we know now there's a shortage, and we know now that something's going to happen. We know now, there's always some new story to give you hope. Now, think about the wealth transfer. Where did the wealth get transferred from? It went from the people's dollars, from the stackers' dollars into the pumpers' coffers. That was the wealth transfer. People that sell precious metals, they sell them for fiat. They want the idea that you're supposed to measure your wealth in ounces. I doubt that they do. I doubt anyone does, other than the people that have bought into the line that's how they measure their wealth. Because the minute you want to spend it, you're going to have to convert it. Glass, a lot of talk about glass here. The problem with 08 gold rush, in my estimation, says single cell organism, in my estimation, is the loss of vision that real economy and not just apocalypse economy happens. Very, very good point. So you had in 2008 basically a real game changer. You had almost game over. And ever since then, you're right, the commentators are always pointing to end game and game changer and game over, and this is going to happen and that's going to happen. You won't be able to find gold. The credit's going to freeze up in this caveman time. You're going to be hiding under your desk with your stack. What about things might just get bad, or things might just get pretty good, and then adjust your affairs accordingly? When they say eventually, not sustainable, that's your life not sustainable. You're not going to live 150 years and say, see, I was right. Unsustainable. DNA, I like this broadcast. It's like finding a good band no one knows about and you follow and become popular. Very good interpretations without the hype. Well, thanks, Database DNA. That's what I've been doing all along, but I'll tell you, the market that I've noticed, and I study markets, there is not a market. People want to hear hype. They may say they're woke. Here's what I've noticed. The people that follow these channels, they trash the mainstream media. Oh, that's a bunch of lies. I don't believe that stuff. The sheep will believe that stuff. And then they immediately believe, hook, line, and sinker, all these guests that they trot out that tell you about game over and game changer, gold 50,000, whatever they tell you. And then they think, yeah, see, I got the inside scoop. I listen to this channel. And then they listen to 7 or 8 or the 10 other channels that say the same thing. Like, yeah, I'm woke. I understand this stuff. I'm not a sheeple. And they're exhibiting exactly the same behavior. They don't do any research whatsoever on their own. They just parrot what they hear, and they just assume these are good guys because they're giving me this information. You don't know if they're being paid. They're paid guests. You don't know how much money they're making doing the broadcast, either because they're being paid, or the guest is a paid guest, or they're making money selling precious metals. You just assume they're like me. I'm like them. They like precious metals. They know the same stuff that I know. We're against the mainstream media. That's sheeple thought. So what I started doing in 2013 is doing my own research, and not just fact checking the stories that I heard, but saying, what's the significance of that? See, they would tell you something, and then they tell you, and therefore it's game over, or therefore silver is set to skyrocket. And when it doesn't happen, you never hear from that portion of the story again. They just give you another one. But the thing about the sheeple mentality is you want to hear the reassurance, and you think these people know what they're talking about, even though objectively I'm not saying that they don't know what they're talking about, but their prognostication skills are horrible. Anyone who's told you to buy silver for the last 10 years and with a straight face tells you that they understand silver, no, they don't. Objectively, they don't. Well, you could just say, well, then they say, well, the market's wrong. They don't see what I see. Well, they're not the market. Sorry. If you can't understand the market and you think the market doesn't understand, or at some point, it's always at some point, it's unsustainable, or at some point, there's a beach ball and you hold it under the water, and at some point, and everyone says, oh, that guy sounds smart. Yeah, at some point, I better buy it now because at some point, this is going to happen. Never considering, maybe it won't happen, or maybe the fact that they gave you about a silver short, whatever it is not that big of a deal. I mentioned Russia the other day. So what that Russia buys gold? Oh, they know what's coming. They're preparing for the collapse and the reset. What? No, they have gold that they mine. They're the second largest gold mining country in the world. They have a crap ruble currency. They're under sanctions. It makes sense for them to buy gold. But the amount of gold that they buy every year, in their record year last year, 224 tons, so what? It means nothing. There's 2,600 tons of gold mined every year. Oh, but they know. Turkey, then they become your gold buddy. Then China's great because they have gold. Russia's great because they have gold. Turkey is great because they have gold. Iran is even going to be great because they're going to use gold, and they're going to give the middle finger to the SWIFT system. Oh, okay. That makes them great. All right. Let's see. What else have we got here in the comments? The storm is coming, the savior coming. Trust the plan, wait and do nothing. Justice always around the corner. Absolutely, it's a single cell organism. Jonathan Rago, I feel part of it is that once people realize the whole system is a scam, they feel a need for some type of white knight against the evil system, i.e. China. Now, if you look at China, you think about that is an evil system. They have social credit monitoring. That basically you could be not allowed to own property in China if the state doesn't like you. You have people that consider themselves patriots, part of the truth community. They're saying that they're libertarians, and then they're praising China because they like gold. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The Chinese government is anything from a libertarian society. It's anything from a free market. Oh, but they're more free market than we are. That's nonsense. They are not. The government is much more involved in manipulating their economy to the point it's 100% involved. State-owned enterprises funded by state-owned banks with no profit motive whatsoever in what they do. That's just there to generate GDP and to give 400 million people that they moved in from the country into the cities where they can track and trace them, and they do with facial recognition software. It's unbelievable. They praise that China is the good guy in all this because they have gold, and Westerners don't understand gold. Chinese are smart. Sun Tzu says, and then they think they're sounding smart because they know something about Sun Tzu, and they know something about Eastern culture. They've never even been there, but they know that they like gold, and they must be smart because the people here are not smart. They don't understand gold. Okay, let's see. Game changer high. Follow gold, follow oil prices. China's worse than YouTube. Gusta broken. I did manage to sell 18K of silver today. So my day is good. Well, good work. Congratulations. The Chinese mystique is a real logic project. Yep, it certainly is. All right, well, someone got me going there on China. China is a game changer. China's going to crush the dollar. The Chinese have had it with the United States. They're in the BRICS. The BRICS have had it. They're going to end dollar hegemony. Never ends. And the idea that when you end dollar hegemony, that's great for gold. And that's great for you. That's great for the world. And everyone's happy. Even though you're a patriot, a truth, you're part of the truth community. I don't get it at all. But again, that's why I have less than 3,000 subscribers. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Remember, tonight's episode was Bitcoin adoption in silver jewelry. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to Smaulgld via Patreon, by PayPal, or I also have Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum options. Do appreciate the support. And if you want to be on the Smaulgld show, we'll have a conversation for about an hour on the Smaulgld subscribers Sound Off series. Even if you've been on before, I have a few on here that I've seen have been on the show before, just shoot me an email and we'll set up a time to talk. Thank you very much.